In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to create a flexible, universal leather material that will work for most of your projects.
My name is Nikita. On this channel, you'll find a lot of useful lessons on the topic of architectural visualization. Subscribe to don't miss new useful videos.
So, this is our final result that you'll get with me at the end of this lesson. Let's take a look at the leather material reference. You can see that the leather material's diffuse map has patches. In addition, the gloss of this material is uneven and has spots and scuffs. Let's do that. I have this interior and there is a model of a sofa. I'm going to open up the material editor and open up the Corona frame buffer. So first, I'm going to create a simple Corona Physical MTL material. Right button, Materials, Corona, Corona Physical MTL. Right away, I'll apply this material to my object and run an interactive render. I have two dirt textures. I will import these textures into Material Editor 3D Max. Next, I'll create a color node and plug it into the base color slot. Right mouse button, Maps, Corona, Corona Color. I plug this node into the base color slot and change the color of this node. Let it be something between brown and orange. Okay. Next, I'm going to blend these dirt textures into my color node. To blend any textures, I'm going to use the Composite node. Right button, Maps, General, Composite. This node allows you to blend different textures together using different blending methods, just like in Photoshop. So, let's plug this node into the base color slot. To the lowest base layer of this node, we'll connect our color node. Next, to the next slot, I'll connect my first dirt texture. Now I'm going to choose the most suitable blending mode. In order to see the effect better, I'm going to open a preview of this node, right button, Open Preview window. Zoom in on the preview. Make sure you have this preview automatically refreshing. And now, in the Composite node, I'm changing the blend methods. The Multiply method works best for me. I can also change the opacity parameter to reduce the impact of this texture. And let's plug the next texture into the top layer right away. Also in Instance mode, and let's choose our blending method. You can do this quickly by rotating the mouse wheel. I like the Value mode. Okay, let's run the interactive render and look at the result. I'm going to lower the impact of each of the dirt textures. Okay, I think this result works for me. To change the scale of each of these textures, I select the texture and change the tiling on each coordinate. The smaller the number, the more scale that texture will have. I'm happy with this so far. Let's move on from there. I also want to apply a Corona Color Correct node at the end of this chain so that I can flexibly and quickly adjust the saturation and brightness of these textures. Right button, Maps, Corona, Corona Color Correct. With the left mouse button, I grab this node and with the Ctrl key held down, I move this node to my link. I release the left mouse button and the link is connected to our chain. And now I can change the brightness, saturation, and blend any color. Okay, now let's work on the gloss of our material. I'm going to select the Corona Physical MTL, find the roughness parameter. The lower this number is, the more sheen our material will have. Let me show you how to do that. Okay. I have this texture that I'm going to apply to the roughness slot. With this texture, our material will have an uneven sheen. I'm going to import the texture into 3ds Max and apply it to the base roughness slot. Now you can see that our material is shiny too much, but you can also see that a texture on the shine has appeared here. Let's work on this effect to make it look more photorealistic and presentable. In order to change this, I have a lot of ways to do this. For example, I can apply a color correction node. Let's try to do that. This node has the same function as Corona's color correction, but in a slightly different configuration. I apply this node to my chain, and using the brightness and contrast parameters, I'm going to change these parameters on my texture. The lighter the texture is going to be, the less shiny it's going to be. Also, in order to make this texture sharper, I'm going to go into it, find the blur parameter, and change it to 0. I also need to increase the tiling of this texture to make it on a finer scale. I select the texture and change its tiling to about 3 on each coordinate. I'm going to do a little bit more work on contrast. In order to do this more flexibly, I'm going to go into advanced mode, and with these two settings, I'm going to make our texture more contrasty. To make this more visual, let me turn on the preview of this node. I'm going to lower the gamma parameter and increase this number. And let's see in the render what that looks like. It looks like this. Great, I like it already. Now, in order to reduce the impact of this texture, I can use the Mix node. Right button, Maps, General, Mix. The Mix node is a node that allows you to mix colors and textures together via a black and white map. In the first slot, I'm going to add our chain via instance, and in the second slot, I'm going to leave the color. And let's apply our Mix node to the base roughness slot. And now, by changing the mix amount parameter, I can reduce the impact of our texture. Let's change that to 50, for example. Okay, you can see the result. I'll change it to 15. That's good. Now, let's add some more roughness to the sheen of our material. To do that, I'm going to apply this roughness texture, import it into 3ds Max, and we need to blend this texture with our previous chain. As always, I'm going to apply the composite node for this. Right button, Maps, General, Composite. Taking the composite node, I'm going to add a new layer. I'll apply our old chain in instance mode to the bottom slot, and I'll apply a texture to the top slot. I'll open the preview with a node, and let's apply any of the blending modes. Let's try the average mode. I'm going to connect the composite node to base roughness. In the viewport, you can see the scale of this texture. I selected this texture and pressed this key. I think the scale is too big, let's zoom in. I select this texture and decrease the number of tiling. I run the interactive render and look at the result. Okay, that's about right. Let's reduce the activity of our texture a little bit by lowering the opacity parameter. And to make our gloss even more varied, I'm going to add another texture here. Let's make it a fingerprint texture. I import it into 3ds Max, select the composite node, and add another slot. And in the top slot, I add a new texture. I activate the composite node preview and select the blending mode for my top texture. I'm also going to stop at average mode and reduce the activity of this texture a little bit. Let me select the new texture. I'm going to click on the Show Shaded Material in Viewport button, and I see that the scale of this texture is also too small. Let's zoom out. I'll select the texture and reduce the number of tiling for each of the coordinates. Let's run an interactive render. Okay, at close range, our material looks like this. And if we get farther away, we see this result. I'd like to further reduce the activity of the last two roughness textures, about half as much. If you want to generally reduce the activity of this whole chain, you can select the material, go below, find the base roughness parameter. Here we have the activity of the whole chain set to 100%. You can reduce this activity, for example, to 70%. And now your whole chain will work at 70%, and the rest of the influence will be taken away by this parameter. And you can more flexibly adjust the brilliance of your material. And the last thing left is to apply normal to our material. I'm going to import normal into the material editor. In order to apply normal to the Corona material, you need to bring up a new node. Right button Maps, Corona, Corona Normal. We plug our normal texture into the normal slot, and this node we plug into the base bump slot. You can see that our material is starting to look strange. To change this, I need to select the corona normal node and turn on the Add Gamma to Input checkbox. And now our normal texture is displaying correctly. Let's take a closer look at what it looks like. And let's make the tiling of this normal texture match the tiling of our roughness texture. I'm going to copy the tiling number from our old texture and paste the tiling for the normal texture for each coordinate. Okay, to reduce the impact of the normal texture, I select the normal node, find the multiplication strength parameter, and change its number. Okay, that's what we need.
Your feedback is important to me. See you next time.